video on something I'm having a faff around with. So if I'm having a faff around with something, might as well make a video. And then we can document what we do, or where it goes right and where it'll go wrong. Not that it might do either. I made some cakes and I put in some powdered dehydrated orange which I'd made. I haven't got it left because I've used it all up. So it was this stuff. So I dried it out in a few different methods, and I was thinking of ways to use it up. And then I was kind of thinking, could we use it in a cake, like powder it up and then put it into a cake? Now the only problem with putting powders into any kind of powders into a cake is it kind of affects the structure of the cake, because you put in less flour in, or you put in more powder in, which dries it out. So I had a bit of thought about that, and I was wondering, is it actually the gluten in the flour that actually is what keeps the cake together, as well as the egg? I was thinking maybe it was, and then I faffed about with a cake, and I made it with bread flour instead of baking powder, and and it was kind of an interesting kind of result. But this is going to be a continuation of that, because I wanted to get as much of that orange into a cake as possible. So I've done 3 cakes. Haven't baked them yet because we're going to go through it. This is the control. So this is just a one. This is one rip. So this is just a cake mixture. This is 3 eggs, 4 ounces of butter, 4 ounces of sugar, 4 ounces of self-raising flour, which is the baking flour, not plain flour that you make pastry out of. Baking flour, self-raising flour. So it's already got some baking powder in it. This cake is another control. This is the cake that is a plain cake, but just made with bread flour with baking powder. I've added to it. So this is number 2. So we put 2 rips, so we know which one that is. And then this is the one I'm really interested in. This is the one that's got the dehydrated orange powder in it. I've made it with strong bread flour, and I've put in baking powder. I put in 2 ounces of the powdered dehydrated orange and 4 ounces of bread flour. It's like a tongue twister. Whereas there's 6 ounces of flour in each of these, there's only 4 ounces, but we're putting the powder in, so it will kind of, hopefully, the strong bread flour will compensate for the fact that it's we've lessened the gluten in it. If it actually is the gluten in it, that it makes the difference. So let's bake them. Let's put 3 rips on that, although we should be able to tell, because that will be orangey flavour. So I just kind of wanted to up the orangey flavour. And yes, of course, we could just use orange essence. We could just use the zest of the orange, which will give a much more intense orange flavour. But I'm all about faffing around with things, honestly, and things that I'm curious about. So, and it's a waste. These oranges are like a waste thing, and what do you kind of do with them? Don't want to throw them away. Dehydrate them. It prolongs their life. But then what can we do with them after that? We can just eat them like sweeties, like candy. But anyway, so we'll bake these 180 for how long? Until they're cooked. You know, that's that, and that. And then we're back in 20 minutes, half an hour. It should be ready. That's the control. Ew. That's the control made with bread flour, which is completely sunken. And this is the orange one. So obviously down to the orange, it's really coloured, and those have collapsed, which might have been down to too much baking powder. But we'll kind of see. So yeah, there might be too much baking powder in the strong flour, but we'll let them cool, and then we'll give them a taste. I'm not going to waste them. I'll be using them. I'll turn them into sponge fingers, and we'll use them in a trifle or something like that, or a tiramisu. Mind you, I won't admit that I'd put them in a tiramisu, because obviously people will be horrified that I was using that type of sponge in a tiramisu. let's have a look. We don't need to look at that one because it's fine. We do need to look at these two. So we'll go right for the centre. Oh, that's kind of quite an interesting texture though. What does it taste like? What does it taste like? Yeah, that's rather nice. That's surprisingly nice as that. I mean, it's not particularly cakey, but it's pretty nice as that. And then this one. Oh, it's not so bad. It's not terrible. What does it taste like? I mean, it's just. I think it's down to the baking powder. Probably needed to be like the other one that I did. I think I did it. I whisked it longer in the mixer, so to kind of activate the gluten. So maybe it needed that to kind of happen to make it, as it rose, to kind of set it more, that there was a bit more strength to it. But it didn't rise as much as like another cake. But anyway, so we live and learn, don't we? Maybe it needs to be. Maybe. Right. So I've got two thoughts. So as I was doing it, I was kind of thinking, well, maybe because the oranges are kind of sweet, that we could actually knock out some of the sugar that we put in, because obviously the sweetness from the oranges would kind of compensate for any kind of lack of sugar. So it's a denser thing. So we're actually asking the more of the flour by actually putting more sugar in, if that kind of makes sense. We're getting the sugar from the oranges, therefore there's actually more sugar going into the cake. So we're asking more of the structure of the cake and the flour, which might be a reason why it fails. And then I was kind of thinking, well, I could make it more like a polenta cake, like a lemon polenta cake, or an orange polenta cake, and kind of do it that way and use the orange powder that way. Maybe because that's like a different type of cake, because it's polenta rather than flour. Or same things with like almonds as well. Maybe we can kind of compensate for that. But unfortunately, I haven't got any more of those oranges, so it's going to be a bit of an unanswered question for a while. But you know, we learn more through failure than we do through success, don't we? So therefore, that's a success.